If you're spending at least a few $100 a month with clay, you're probably wasting 80% of your spend with 5 really easy to make, really simple but costly mistakes that I've made. And I want to show you in this video 5 ways you can save tons of money with clay and do the same thing for less. For example, we did a study comparing different ClayGen models for the same tasks and found that some models can cost 15 to 50 times more money for the exact same thing, and even can be less accurate despite you paying more. That's the difference between paying $1,000 and $20,000 for the exact same list. And believe me, I've seen clients blow through tens of thousands of dollars in cash, cold hard cash, using the wrong clay workflow setups. Clay can be so powerful and so cheap if you do it properly, but I hear people complaining all the time and asking me, how do you do it for so cheap? It's so expensive. Clay credits are so expensive. I spend so much for one record. It's not worth it. This is the saddest thing I've ever heard, because clay can be the most cost-effective and accurate data provider with the best coverage if you play your cards right. Or it can be inaccurate, slow, inefficient, really expensive if you do it incorrectly. And there's so many fake clay experts out there nowadays, you don't know what you're getting. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 simple tips, 5 steps to maximize your clay spend so you don't make the same mistakes that I made and waste tons of money. By the way, if you're worried about your clay tables blowing through cash and you want someone to take a look at it, my name is Jacob Tuweiner. I've helped tons of companies like Sendoso, Nooks, ConnectWise, leading B2B SaaS companies with their clay accounts, enriching their CRM, whether it's in Salesforce or HubSpot. I've enriched millions of records. I've seen it all. I've spent thousands of hours in clay. And if you want a free clay table teardown where I will audit your clay account, all you have to do is click the link down below if you're on YouTube, or comment if you're on LinkedIn. And I will personally, you can just give me your clay table link. I'll look at the data. I'll audit it for free. I'll show you what's wrong with it in a Loom video, and I'll rebuild the clay table for you from scratch so you can see a more efficient and effective way to save money in clay and probably improve your accuracy as well. Totally free. I'm not doing this because I'm trying to be nice. I do want to work with you. If you have a need to outsource your clay work, this is an easy way for me to show you how good I am. And if it's something that you think that you could see yourself doing down the line, then feel free to hire me. Otherwise, you can walk away with a free clay table audit and a better clay table in hand with a Loom video to improve your clay skills. Again, if you're on YouTube, click the link down below. And if you're on LinkedIn, just comment audit, and I will audit your clay table for you for free. With that being said, let's get into the video. The first huge way you can save money in clay is with smart ClayGen model selection and using your own API keys. I see tons of people making this mistake of using ClayGen or Clay's proprietary models and paying Clay credits for their API calls. And you can see here, when you spin up ClayGen, by default, Clay is recommending Argon, which is their 3 credit per call model. If you're on the highest plan, the Pro plan, you're paying 1.6 cents per call, which times 3 credits is 4.8 cents per call. Now, you probably could do the exact same thing using your own API key with OpenAI for fractions of a penny. And in most cases, it's going to be more accurate and way cheaper. I'm talking 15 to 50 times cheaper. And I've done a test to prove it. As you can see here, we actually tested 5 different models. We tested the cheap 1 credit model from Clay, the 3 credit model with Argon, and then 3 different OpenAI models, 4.0 mini, 4.0, and 4.1, across 3 different tasks: easy tasks, medium tasks, hard tasks. If you make this mistake, trust me, you will pay for it. I have in the past. So this is mistake number 1 to avoid. This next mistake will cost you 5 times more on your clay spend than you need to be spending for the exact same thing. We've tested this and we found that, as you can see here, for the exact same data set, you can spend either $216 or $1,000, $1,050 at that, which is about 5 times more expensive for the exact same thing for pretty much the same level of accuracy. And it's a really easy way to make a mistake. I'm going to explain to you now why this is such a big mistake and how easy it is to solve it. Most people, when they use clay, they're going to use ClayGen for everything, and they're going to use a pretty expensive model. Even if you are using your own OpenAI models and you're not using clay credits, you can still spend a ton on OpenAI that you don't need to be spending. And this is how it works. OpenAI is going to bill you, or really any AI provider, they're going to bill you based on the context window and the intelligence of the model. Context window basically means how many tokens or how many characters or how much information you are processing. And the intelligence of the model is, how smart the model is. So more tokens / context, more characters, more stuff you're processing, more information, right? That's all one component. The other component is intelligence. And the main point is this cost column. You can see these API calls are costing 1.5 cents, 1.6 cents, sometimes 2.8 cents, or even 3.4 cents per call, which is pretty expensive. Across a data set of 100,000 records, if it's 2 cents a call, on average, you're going to spend about $2,000 for the entire data set. Now, the reason why it's so expensive is because you're using a more expensive model, and ClayGen is going out and it's processing all this information, reading through the website, the whole homepage, the whole site, a bunch of other websites, and all of that context is being then processed with a more expensive model. Whereas when you use just a controlled output. Like let's say you take this output from Clayagent and use this as your input for the ChatGPT prompt to then bucket the appropriate company category, you can save a ton of money because you're limiting the context window. And what we're doing here is we're using a cheaper, less intelligent model for the Clayagent outreach, Clayagent research, right? Because Clayagent's doing a ton of token processing. And then we're passing this smaller paragraph as opposed to the whole website into this ChatGPT output column. And this is using a more intelligent model, which frankly, the cheaper model is fine for research, right? You're just scraping a site and summarizing what they do. The more intelligent model is much more helpful when you're making a more nuanced decision, when you have a bunch of different company categories to go through and a lot of rule sets to think through, right? That's where a more intelligent model is helpful. But if you pass the whole website into this context window, it can be a lot and it's very expensive. So what we do to save money is we just take this summary and we pass it right here instead. And then that really lowers the context window of the prompt. These are outputting for a tenth of a penny, sometimes less than a tenth of a penny. And then these, even using 4.0 as our model here, we're still getting outputs here for less than 0.3 of a penny. Pretty much all around is about 0.3 of a penny. So let's say to combine, you're looking at 0.4 of a penny as opposed to 2 cents, right? So that's going to be about 5 times cheaper all in all. And that's what we found in our overall data set. So really, really easy way to save money in Clay is using Clayagent 4.0 Mini plus GPT 4.0 or another combination of a cheaper AI model for the research and a more expensive model for the decision. The only time where you want to upgrade this is if you find that the cheaper models aren't actually able to figure out the information that you need, in which case you might want to bump up to a more expensive model. But usually you can get away with a much cheaper model. The next mistake you can make in Clay is pretty common, and I see clients doing it all the time. It's more of an industry mistake than I think a Clay-specific mistake, but it is one that you should watch out for. It's essentially paying for data that's never going to be accurate and is way overpriced. Some examples of this that I see all the time are revenue and tech stack. For example, if we go into Clay and we look up revenue, right, for a company, you can see here 9 credits for company revenue range, 7 credits for revenue over here. I usually see my clients spending 1 to 2 credits per company total. The rest of what we're doing for them is all AI, which is super, super cheap. Like we said before, on the highest plan, which means you get the best price per credit, you're spending 1.6 cents per credit. 9 credits at that price is going to cost you 14 cents per record. And that's only for one property. If you do a bunch of this, you're going to have 20, 30, 40 credits a record. And if you do 40 credits a record at this price, you're spending 64 cents per company. Times that by a company database of a decent size, let's say 80,000 records. That's a smaller database. You're spending $50,000 for 80,000 companies. That's crazy. And I usually can enrich my client's entire data set for less than $5,000 all in for tens or hundreds of thousands of records instead of tens of thousands of dollars for the same data set. So I can literally save you the price of my service fee and more just by hiring me as opposed to trying to do this yourself. Now, why is revenue so unreliable? Why is tech stack so unreliable? Why are other properties so unreliable? I'll explain. Revenue is unreliable because most companies don't publish their revenue. I'm a private company. I don't publish my revenue anywhere. Okay. There are also tons of private companies that don't publish revenue. The only companies that actually have public revenue are public companies. Therefore, all of these all these data providers that sell revenue data are, I don't want to say they're lying, but I really don't know how they're figuring this out. I think they're probably making it up because there's nowhere they could go to figure out how much revenue a company is doing. Revenue, unless it's a public company, is not helpful. And by the way, if it was a public company, I still wouldn't want to go for this provider because you could probably get more accurate results by scraping their public filings using AI, which is much cheaper and probably much more accurate. So this is a data point that's probably going to eat up the bulk of your Clay spend and isn't even reliable, which is very frustrating. People think that every data provider in this platform is 100%. They're not, unfortunately. And you have to know and just kind of think, based on your industry knowledge, what makes sense to spend on and what does not. By the way, if you want me to tear down your Clay table, I can find probably a bunch of ways you're wasting money and save you around 50 to 75% of your Clay spend. I do Clay table teardowns. All you have to do is click the link down below, submit a form with your Clay workbook URL, maybe a Loom video going through, answer a few questions, and I will personally go through your Clay table, find issues, ways you're overspending, ways you're probably getting less accurate results than possible, and send back a Loom video with a brand new Clay table that does the same exact thing with my findings. And I'll show you how to do it much better from the beginning instead. And you can take it from there. So if you're interested, click the link down below and don't make the same mistakes I see people making all the time that are going to blow through your Clay credit spend. So if you're interested, click the link down below and don't make the same mistake that I see people making all the time that's going to cost you tons and tons, thousands or tens of thousands of dollars in wasted Clay spend. Click the link, it takes 5 minutes, and I will do all the work for you. Cheers. The next way to blow through money in Clay is taking Clay suggestions on your credit spend. It's a capitalist economy, and unfortunately, they're incentivized to recommend more credits than you need to spend so they can make more money. And this comes up all the time throughout the product, unfortunately. But there's some easy ways to get around it. Really, you don't need to spend so many credits, but if you follow Clay's suggestions, you might end up spending way more than you need to. As a reference, I usually spend 1 to 2 credits, maybe 3 per record for my clients. Most of the time, just 1 Clay credit per record, and everything else is almost all going to be AI or custom API keys. But you can see right here, if we want to figure out where a person currently works, we can click on this enrichment right here, and this is not even going to show us the quick setup guide for newbies is going to be really, really simple. All you do is pass in the URL, hit save. You can see there's an average of 8 credits a row, which is really high. You can get a 1 credit per row enrichment with enriched person, right? The enriched person enrichment, which actually pulls LinkedIn data, which is the best quality data, and it's only 1 credit. The other providers they're going to recommend are going to be much more expensive and probably much less reliable. So if you click on the full configuration over here, you're going to see that they have the first one right here, right? Enriched person, this is good. But beyond that, they have a few 2 credit providers, a 5 credit provider, and even a 30 credit provider. Now, that is pretty high. And if this averages out to 8 credits a row for 1 enrichment, and you're paying 1.6 cents a credit, which is on the highest plan, you could be paying more per credit. That's going to be, for 10,000 records, $1,200 just to figure this out. We could do a whole data set of 10,000 records or with all the information you need for the same amount of money. So you really can overspend in Clay if you don't know what you're doing and you use enrichments willy-nilly. You really should be consulting an expert to ask which enrichments do I need, which ones do I not need, because they're going to recommend these in the waterfall for you. You really don't need to spend this much money on Clay enrichment credits. It's crazy. Don't do it. The last way to blow through money in Clay is not knowing when to use your own API keys. I just talked about how you really shouldn't willy-nilly follow Clay's credit recommendations, integration recommendations, because you can go through credits like crazy. Now, on top of that, there are a lot of times where you can just use your own API key in general and bypass Clay credits altogether. Now, it doesn't always make sense to do this. In fact, there are plenty of integrations in Clay that you can't sign up for self-serve without going through an enterprise sales process. And so Clay makes it much easier for you to access certain companies' data that otherwise you wouldn't be able to access. So that's a really huge benefit. But there's many cases where data providers are easily self-serve, right? You can sign up and get the API key in like 5 minutes. And oftentimes they're going to be much cheaper, sometimes by 50% or more than using Clay. The number one place I see this, I think that comes up the most, is emails. Emails can cost 2 credits per row. And if you're on the highest Clay plan, that's going to be 3.2 cents per email, right? Because you're paying 1.6 cents per credit times 2. And on lower plans, it gets even more expensive from there. So even in a best case scenario, you're paying about 3.2 cents an email. Whereas if you go to a tool like Prospio, which is one of the providers in the email waterfall, and all of them are similarly priced, you can get 240,000 credits, which is going to basically probably be good for most large data sets, right? You can get that billed annually for $1,668. Now, that's going to come in at about 0.7 cents per credit. So you're essentially getting the same information for a fourth of the price, right? So Clay is more than 4 times more expensive than this. If you have a smaller data set, you still can save about 50% if you buy the growth plan paid up front. And this is going to be true for all of the data providers. Now, if you have a small data set and you don't really want to worry about managing a bunch of API keys, I get it. Clay can be fine. But once you get into the larger data sets and you're doing a lot of email enrichment, for example, it usually makes sense to buy your own API key. So I would recommend looking at the providers that you're enriching with Clay if you're going to do a larger data set and see if it makes more sense to buy the API yourself or do it the old-fashioned way with Clay. There you have it, folks. 5 easy ways to blow through credits in Clay. I see these mistakes made all the time for almost every client account that I get into, almost every Clay table that I tear down. These mistakes are being made. Don't make them yourself. You'll thank yourself later. You'll save yourself thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, which means way more enrichment for your sales team, for your marketing team, much more pipeline, etc. Your bang for your enrichment buck is going to go a lot farther. So if you appreciate this video, I'm going to ask you one more time, 3 CTAs per video, to click the link down below and submit your Clay table workbook for a free Clay table teardown from yours truly. I'll go into your Clay table, I'll look it through, find mistakes, make sure there's nothing wrong, help you save probably half your Clay spend with like 10 minutes of work. It's really crazy. And I'll send you back a Loom video walkthrough with a brand new Clay table doing the exact same thing for less. So if you're interested, click the link down below and I'll help you do your job much better. Cheers.